He walked into the lobby holding a food bag. 30 seconds later, they called security. But what they did not know, what no one knew, was that the delivery boy they tried to kick out was actually the new owner of the entire company. This is not just a story about success. It is a story about revenge, revelation, and rewriting the rules from the inside. Stay till the end, because the twist will leave you speechless. They called security on the delivery boy because he was black, because his shoes were worn, because he looked too comfortable walking into a marble-floored lobby. His name was Elijah. The sun baked the pavement outside, but inside it was cold, air-conditioned, and sterile. Receptionist glanced up, then quickly away. He held the food bag like a peace offering. The smell of grilled chicken and garlic filled the space. He smiled. No one smiled back. A man in a blazer stepped forward. His voice was clipped, practiced. You should wait outside. Elijah blinked. He had the delivery pen. He was on the app, but he was not on their list. A security guard walked toward him, broad shoulders, a hand resting near the radio on his chest. People in suits slowed their walk. They watched. Elijah's palms began to sweat. He felt the weight of their eyes. He could hear the ticking of the wall clock. The marble echoed every shift of his shoes. I am here for Mr. Landon, he said. The guard raised an eyebrow. There is no delivery scheduled for Mr. Landon. Elijah reached into his back pocket. Slowly, he pulled out a card. Black. Matt. No title. Just a name. Elijah R. Brooks. The receptionist looked again, this time longer. Her face lost its color. She tapped keys. She swallowed hard. I am sorry. Would you like to go up? Elijah's voice was calm. Steady. I am already here. He walked past the guard, through the glass doors, down the familiar hallway, the same hallway he used to sweep at night, back when his badge said janitor in faded blue ink. The elevator chimed. He stepped inside, pressed the top floor, the floor where the board met, where his name now sat on the wall in gold lettering. Behind him, the lobby was silent, except for the smell of garlic. And shame. He never delivered food again, but they still talked about the day they called security. On the delivery boy, he stood in the elevator, breathing steady, eyes fixed on the floor numbers as they lit up. 1, 2, 3. Each ding echoed like a drumbeat. His heart matched the rhythm. 4, 5. He could still feel the weight of their stares, not just in the lobby, but in every room he had walked into over the years. Rooms where voices dropped, where smiles were tight, where he was invisible unless he was needed. 6, 7. Now they would see, not the delivery boy, not the janitor, the owner, the architect, the man who bought the company that once ignored him. 8. The doors opened. The scent changed. Leather, coffee, polished wood. Silence draped the corridor like a velvet curtain. He stepped out. The walls were lined with framed accolades, old COs, award dinners, smiling men with gray hair and heavy watches. He walked past them, unimpressed. His name would not be framed. It would be built into the foundation, permanent. He reached the glass doors of the executive boardroom. Voices murmured inside. Laughter, the clink of a spoon against ceramic. He pushed the door open. Slowly, 12 heads turned. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. The room froze. Elijah stepped in, confident. No announcement, no introduction. He did not need one. Chairman Gray's eyes widened. His hand still held a coffee cup midair. Elijah, he said, as if he had seen a ghost. As in Elijah Brooks? Elijah nodded. Good morning. He walked to the head of the table, paused, then sat down. That seat used belonged to Gray. Now it was his. He placed a small folder on the table, spread it open. Inside, legal documents, ownership contracts, acquisition letters, sealed, signed, final. This is not a prank. Elijah said, I own this company now. A cough. Someone shifted in their seat. Another blinked hard. One man glanced toward the door like he might run. Elijah let the silence stretch, let it settle in their chests. He wanted them to feel it, The shift, the correction. One woman with red-framed glasses cleared her throat. How? She asked. 2 letters. Small question. Heavy meaning. How? As in, how could someone like you? Elijah leaned back in the chair. His chair. He looked around. At the modern chandelier. At the skyline through the full-length windows. At the art he had chosen to replace the old colonial prints. How? He repeated. By watching. By learning. By listening while I swept under this very table. Someone gasped. He continued. By saving every dollar I made while you pretended I did not exist. He turned to Gray. You paid me minimum wage. Gray's lips parted, but no words came. You let people throw trash on the floor in front of me. Still no reply. But I watched. I studied. I bought stock. I waited until you were drowning in debt. And then I bought you out. The woman with the glasses spoke again. You planned this? Elijah looked at her. Direct. Unapologetic. I survived this place, he said. And I made sure no one else would have to. He stood up, pulled out a second folder. This one thicker. He placed it in the center of the table. This is the new plan, he said. Equity programs. Diversity hiring. Living wages for all roles. He turned to the corner of the room. A young intern sat there. She wore sneakers. She looked afraid. He nodded to her. You start next week as my junior advisor. Her mouth fell open. She did not speak. She just nodded. One slow, grateful nod. Elijah looked around the table. This room will change, he said. It already has. Gray pushed his chair back. Face pale. You will destroy this company. Elijah stared at him, voice steady. I will rebuild it. He walked to the window, looked out at the city. It was the same view, but it felt different now. He remembered walking these streets, dodging puddles, delivering food to men who never made eye contact. Now the city bowed to him. He turned back to the room. You all have a choice, he said. Adapt or leave. Nobody moved. Nobody blinked. Even the air stopped moving. Outside, a single bird flew past a window. Free, unbothered. Inside, Elijah exhaled. Slow, full. It was done. Not the story, not the journey, but the moment, the reckoning, the rewriting of who held power. They had called security because they saw a boy with a bag, but they never saw the man behind the silence, the strategist in the shadows. Now, they would never forget. The room sat in stillness, the scent of garlic still faint on his collar, a reminder, not of where he started, but of how far he refused to stay. He turned toward the door, paused, spoke one last sentence. You will call me Chairman Brooks. And then he walked away, step by step, each footfall loud in the silence. He did not look back. He did not need to, because this was not a delivery. It was a return, and he had come to claim what was his. He walked down the hallway, the same hallway that once echoed with the squeak of a mop. Now it echoed with authority. His footsteps were crisp, measured, final. He passed the old assistant's desk. Empty. She had once told him the bathroom was not for staff. He remembered her face. He remembered them all. The people who saw through him, but never at him. Now they were gone, or quiet, or adjusting their resumes. He stepped into his office. His name was etched on the frosted glass. Elijah R. Brooks, Chief Executive Officer. The blinds were open. Sunlight spilled across the floor like a golden ribbon. He stood by the window, looked out at the city. Steel, glass, noise. He had built something stronger than all of it. Resilience, memory, resolve. He sat behind the desk. The leather chair hissed softly as it welcomed him. He rested his palms on the surface. The wood was smooth, cold, expensive. He ran his hand across it, thinking about every cheap plastic table he had eaten lunch on, every paper-wrapped sandwich. Every tip counted twice. The phone buzzed. He glanced down. A message from legal. Acquisition confirmed. Press release ready. He replied with one word. Send. Another buzz. His assistant, not the old one, the new one, young, smart, from the same neighborhood Elijah grew up in. Media wants a quote. Should I forward? He typed, no quote. They can watch. The phone stopped buzzing. Silence returned. But it was not heavy. It was earned. A knock came at the door. Soft. He looked up. A janitor stood in the doorway, holding a mop. Hesitant, eyes low, uniform creased from hours of work. Elijah stood, walked to him, extended a hand. Come in, he said. The janitor stepped inside slowly, looking at the floor, at the windows, at Elijah. Sorry, sir, he muttered. I did not mean to interrupt. You did not, Elijah said. He smiled, held out a chair. Take a break. Sit with me. The janitor blinked, then sat. His hands trembled. Elijah poured water into 2 glasses, offered one. The janitor took it. You work nights? Elijah asked. The man nodded. 3 years now. Hard work. Yes, sir. Elijah leaned forward. Has anyone ever asked you what you want to be? The janitor's eyebrows rose. No, he said softly. Well, Elijah said, I am asking now. The man swallowed. An electrician. I studied before my dad passed. Elijah nodded. You still got your books? In a box. At home. Bring them. The janitor looked confused. To work. To the future, Elijah said. You start classes next month. On us. The man's lip quivered, eyes shining. You serious? As a second chance. Elijah said. The man stood quickly, almost knocked over the chair. Thank you, he whispered. Elijah smiled again. You will pay it forward someday. The janitor left. Elijah returned to his desk, opened his laptop, email after email, congratulating, speculating, apologizing, from former executives, from people who once ignored his presence in the elevator, from those who asked if he was lost. He clicked delete, one by one, not out of anger, but because none of it mattered now. He opened a new document, typed the words, Company Culture Guidelines, Draft 1. He wrote, Asterisk no title is more important than kindness. Asterisk no role is beneath respect. Asterisk anyone can rise. He leaned back, let the words breathe. They felt true. They felt earned. His phone buzzed again. An old number, blocked years ago. He stared at it, felt the cold prickle of memory. His father's voice, rough, disappointed. You will never make it, boy. Not like them. Elijah let the call ring out, then deleted the contact. He did not need that echo anymore. A chime came from the hallway. His assistant peeked in. They are ready for you downstairs. Press conference. He stood, straightened his jacket, his reflection caught in the glass. Not a boy, not a servant, a leader. He walked down the hallway, each step lighter than the last. Down the elevator, past the marble lobby. The receptionist looked up, her face still pale, still shocked. He nodded. She stood, almost bowed, but he kept walking, past the security guard who had followed him that morning. The guard did not speak, only stepped aside. Outside, cameras flashed. People crowded behind barricades. They chanted his name. They wore shirts with his logo. They held signs. Elijah R. Brooks, built, not bought. He stepped onto the stage. The mic adjusted to his height. Flashes burst like lightning. He looked out at the sea of faces. Young, old, every color, every story. He gripped the podium. Breathed in. Spoke clearly. I was not supposed to be here. The crowd leaned forward. I was supposed to keep my head down. I was supposed to stay invisible. But I saw every crack in the ceiling. I counted every locked door. And I made keys. The crowd roared, but he held up a hand. Quiet returned. This company belongs to all of us now. No more ladders that lead nowhere. No more names forgotten in break rooms. He paused. Let the moment rise. This is not the end of the story, he said. It is the beginning of a better one. And the city around him listened, not because he shouted, but because he had arrived, not with a delivery, but with a promise that no one would ever be unseen again. The applause swelled, not polite, not rehearsed, raw, rising like thunder across the plaza. Elijah stood still, let the sound wash over him, not for ego, but for proof that the world was listening now. He stepped down from the podium. The air buzzed with energy. Reporters surged forward. Questions flew like arrows. Mr. Brooks, what inspired your comeback? Is this a revenge story? Will you change the company name? He paused mid-step, turned to face them. No, he said, this is not revenge. This is restoration. And the name will remain, because changing it would let them forget. And I want the world to remember what it used to be, what it almost stayed. He walked through the crowd. Hands reached for handshakes. Photos. Congratulations. But his eyes kept scanning. Not for fame. For faces. For the ones who never expected this moment. He spotted one. A woman in a blue apron. Standing near the edge. A delivery badge clipped to her shirt. Their eyes met. She froze. Then smiled. Tired. Hopeful. He walked to her. Long day, he asked. 14 hours, she replied. Tips? Low. Respect. She laughed softly. What is that? He handed her a card. Not glossy. Just paper. Plain and powerful. It read, Elijah R. Brooks, CEO, former delivery driver, always listening. She looked at it, then at him. Her lip trembled. No one ever talks to us like this. They will now, Elijah said. He took her hand, shook it firmly. Keep going. You never know who is watching. She nodded, eyes shining. The crowd parted. He continued down the sidewalk. Cameras still followed, but he had other plans, other places to go. He passed a bus stop. A young boy sat on the bench, dirty sneakers, a backpack too big for his shoulders. He stared at Elijah, not blinking. Elijah stopped. Kicking off school, he asked. The boy nodded. Trying to stay out of trouble, he muttered. Elijah sat beside him. For a moment, they were just two people. Not a CEO, not a kid, just stories in progress. You know, Elijah said, I used to wait at this same stop. The boy's eyes widened. For real? Every day. Before work. After work. Sometimes just to think. The boy looked at him. You own a whole building now. Elijah smiled. I own my name. That matters more. He pulled a worn notebook from his coat, passed it to the boy. Inside were pages of scribbles. Ideas, goals, mistakes, lessons. Write in it, he said, even when no one listens, especially then. The boy nodded, clutched the notebook like it held secrets. Elijah stood again. The city moved around him. Taxis honked. Sirens hummed in the distance. A breeze carried the smell of coffee and concrete. He looked up. The sky was wide, blue and endless. For the first time, it felt like it belonged to him. He headed toward a side street, not the valet lane, not the penthouse exit. He wanted to walk, to feel the city under his feet again. He passed an alley. He stopped, turned. Inside was a mural, bright, bold, unfinished. He stepped closer. A man stood on a ladder, brush in hand, painting a giant portrait of Elijah. The eyes were not quite right yet, but the posture was powerful. He looked up at the artist. You missed a scar, Elijah said, pointing to his temple. The artist laughed. You want it in? Yes, Elijah said. Every part of the story matters. The artist nodded. Carefully, he dabbed his brush, added the line. Small, but true. Elijah stood for a moment, watched the wall come to life, watched the city reflect him back at himself. He turned and kept walking, toward a diner, a simple one, the kind with chip tables and booze that stuck to your legs in summer. He walked in. The bell jingled. The waitress glanced up, then did a double take. You're him, she whispered. I'm just hungry, Elijah said. She led him to a booth. He slid in, ordered a grilled cheese and black coffee. The same thing he ordered 10 years ago, when all he had was a $5 bill and a head full of ideas. He watched people pass outside. They were rushing, running, surviving. He knew that life, and he had not forgotten. The waitress brought his food, set it down with care. "On the house," she said. Elijah shook his head. "No." He left a $100 bill on the table. She gasped, "You sure?" He nodded. Always tip the people who show up. He took a bite. The sandwich was buttery, cheesy, perfect. He sipped his coffee. Bitter, real, like the world, like his story. He looked down at his phone. Hundreds of messages. He opened one. It was from a school, a scholarship program, accepting his donation, launching a new name, the Brooks Foundation for Working Youth. He smiled, then locked the phone. Put it away. For now, this was his moment, not of power, but of peace, not to celebrate a victory, but to honor the climb. And he would keep climbing, because there were more doors to open, more chairs to pull out, more names to remember. He took another sip. The city kept moving. But Elijah was right where he needed to be, visible, unshaken, and finally fully seen. He stayed in the booth longer than most people do. Not because he was hiding, but because he finally could rest. The world outside was noisy, pulsing, never stopping. Inside, the clink of forks, the low hum of conversation, the hiss of the grill, familiar sounds. Sounds he once heard while mopping the floor after closing. He remembered the rhythm. He remembered how silence used to hurt. Now it healed. He slid his plate forward. Crumbs scattered. A half-empty coffee mug sat beside it. He stared at it. The steam had faded, but it still carried warmth. Just like him. He stood up. The waitress came over, wiping her hands on her apron. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Of course." "Why here?" He looked around the small diner. Cracked vinyl booths. Flickering ceiling light in the corner. Walls yellowed from time. He answered without hesitation. "Because this place never lied to me." She blinked. He kept going. "Every other room I was in, I had to earn the right to be there. But here, I came in tired, hungry. No one questioned me. No one called security." She smiled gently. "You are always welcome." He nodded. "I know. That is why I came back." He walked out. The bell over the door sang one last time. Back on the street, the wind had picked up. Summer fading at the edges. Fall trying to push its way in. Leaves skittered along the sidewalk like tiny dancers. He pulled his jacket tighter. Not from cold. From reflection. From memory. He passed a building with mirrored windows. Saw himself again. Older now. Not broken. Not bent. Just built. Built from long nights. From hunger. From being told no in 100 different ways. Now, he said yes to himself. At the next corner, a young woman handed out flyers. College info session. She looked bored, tired. Elijah took one. She barely glanced at him, then did a double take. Her jaw dropped. "Wait, you are that guy." He laughed. "I am a guy." No, you own that tech firm now. You were on the news." He nodded. "I was. And you are?" "Danica." "Danica," he said. "Are you in school?" "Trying. Between jobs. Rent keeps winning." He folded the flyer, tucked it into his coat. "Call that number. Show them this card." He handed her another one. Not black this time. White, embossed with a raised silver bee. Brooks Initiatives, Equity Through Opportunity. She held it like it was made of gold. "Is this real?" He smiled. "Real as your next step." Her eyes welled. She wiped them quickly. "Thank you. Make it count," he said. Then he walked. Not fast, not slow, just steady. He crossed into the neighborhood where it all began. Cracked sidewalks, graffiti under bridges, fences patched with hope. He passed a small community center. Paint peeling, door slightly off its hinge. But inside, laughter. a basketball thumping. He stepped in. Kids ran across the court, shoes squealing on the floor. A coach shouted encouragement. Another adult sat at a folding table, grading worksheets. They saw him. Their eyes widened. Not fear, recognition, respect. "Elijah Brooks," the coach said. "You came back." "I never left," he replied. He walked to the kids. One dribbled a ball, smaller than his hands. Elijah reached out, caught it mid-bounce. The kid stared up. "Teach me something," he said. Elijah dropped low, showed him a crossover. "Keep your eyes up. Control is everything." The ball hit the floor, back and forth. The kid followed the motion, slow at first, then smoother, then grinning. "You learn fast," Elijah said. He turned to the coach. "What do you need?" "Supplies, computers, space, hope." Elijah nodded. "All of it is coming." The coach chuckled. "Just like that." "No," Elijah said. "Not just like that. Like this." He pulled out a small folder. Again, he always carried one. Inside, plans, blueprints, budgets, commitments. He handed it over. The coach flipped through it, eyes wide, mouth open. "You serious?" "I do not make promises I cannot keep," Elijah said. "This center, it raised me." Time to return the favor. A buzzer rang. Kids lined up for water. One girl stayed behind. She looked shy, curious. "Elijah," she asked. He knelt beside her. "Yes." "Can girls be CEOs too?" He smiled. "The best ones are." She beamed, ran off toward her team. He stood. The coach shook his hand. Firm grip, grateful. "You have no idea what this means," the coach said. Elijah looked around. Walls crumbling, hearts beating. "Yes," he said, "I do." He walked out again, back into the late afternoon. The sun was lower, the air turning. But inside him, something burned steady. Not fame, not glory. A vow to see every person he used to be, to pull them up, to hand them the mic, the seat, the power. He turned one last corner. There it was, his old apartment. Top floor, one broken window, stairs that creaked. He stared up at it, felt the years in his spine, not with pain, with pride. He did not need to go back inside. He had already carried that place with him. Every lesson, every scrape. He touched the fence. Rust flaked off, but the foundation held. So, did he? He exhaled. No cameras now, no suits, just him and the world he came from. He whispered to the sky, "I made it." Then added, "Now it is your turn." And somewhere across that city, a boy stepped off a bus, a girl opened a book, a janitor signed up for night school, and a dream, once ignored, began to wake. The wind caught his words, carried them up, across fire escapes, through open windows, into living rooms where ambition had been sleeping too long. He stood still for a while, hands in his pockets, feet planted where it all began. Then he turned away from the old building, not out of rejection, but because the past had finally served its purpose. His car waited at the curb, not a limousine, not a glossy black statement, a quiet sedan, unmarked, unassuming, just like him. He opened the door, slid inside. The driver nodded. "Where to, Mr. Brooks?" He paused, glanced once more in the rear-view mirror. Atwood Prison. The driver hesitated, then pulled into traffic. The city blurred. Billboards, towers, alleys, benches. Every face on the sidewalk told a different story. Every red light was a reminder. Atwood Prison sat on the edge of the city. Steel fences, gravel paths, a place people rarely visited unless they had to. Elijah had to. The gates opened. The guards stared. Some recognized him. One whispered his name. "Brooks." He nodded, signed in, passed through metal detectors. His footsteps echoed to the long corridor. The walls were gray, unfeeling, the smell of bleach and tired lives. He reached the visitation room. Glass windows, phones hanging from cords. A guard pointed to booth 5. He sat, picked up the receiver. On the other side, a man walked in, chains on his wrists, slow gait, but eyes alert. The man sat down, picked up the phone. He was older, thinner, rough lines around his eyes. Elijah spoke first. "Hello, Dad." The man swallowed, said nothing, just looked at him. "I figured you might want to see what I became." The man's voice was a dry rasp. "You look different." Elijah smiled faintly. "You look the same." A silence hung, not angry, just heavy. His father looked down. "Why did you come?" "To tell you, I am not angry anymore." His father flinched slightly. "Not even after what I said?" "Especially after that." Another silence, a longer one. His father finally said, "I was scared that you would try and fail, that the world would eat you alive." "It did," Elijah replied, "but I chewed back." A soft laugh came through the glass, then faded. His father shifted. "You still carry it?" Elijah tilted his head. "The scar, the weight." "I used to," Elijah said, "but I turned it into fire." He reached into his coat, pulled out a thin book, held it up. The title read, "Letters from the Undervalued." "I wrote this," Elijah said, "about you, about me, about everyone who was ever overlooked." His father stared at it, blinking slow. "It is coming to the prison library," Elijah continued. "I made sure of it. I want the forgotten to know they are still part of the story." His father leaned forward, rested his forehead against the glass, did not cry, just breathed. "I am proud of you, son," he said. Elijah let the words settle. Let them root in places that had been barren too long. "Thank you," he said. They spoke for 10 more minutes. Not of pain, but of future. When the guard returned, Elijah stood. "Take care of yourself," he said. His father nodded. "Keep writing." Elijah walked back through the halls, this time lighter. The door buzzed open. The sun was beginning to dip. Shadows stretched across the parking lot. He stood for a moment, looked up. The sky was on fire. Orange, gold, purple bleeding into the horizon. He took a breath, then another, and walked toward the next place on his list. A shelter, near the river. They were expecting him. The director waited at the door. A woman in her 60s. Silver curls. Tough voice softened by years of listening. "You showed up," she said. "I always do," he replied. She hugged him, tight, like she had known the boy before the man. He stepped inside. The room buzzed with quiet conversation. Some guests sat with heads bowed. Some stared at the TV. Some just stared at the floor. He moved through them gently. Handshakes. Introductions. He saw himself in every pair of tired eyes. He stood in front of a whiteboard, picked up a marker, wrote 3 words. "Dreams start here," then turned. "You do not need money to begin. You do not need permission to try. You need belief. And I believe in you." The silence that followed was not empty. It was full of possibility. Someone clapped, then another, then more, until the room shook with hope. Later, he sat with a young man in a corner, tattered hoodie, calloused hands, eyes like flint. They spoke quietly, about code, about startups, about nights spent under bridges. Elijah gave him a card. "I want you in our next tech cohort." The man took it slowly. "Me? Yes. Even after jail?" "Especially after jail." He left the shelter after dark. The street lights flickered on one by one. The air had cooled. The noise of the city softened to a whisper. He walked alone for a while, not because he had to, because he wanted to. The buildings no longer loomed. They nodded, like old friends. He passed a mural, the one of himself, now complete. The eyes were sharp. The scar was there. The chin lifted just slightly. Someone had spray painted a message beside it. "If he could, we can." Elijah smiled, then turned away and kept walking, because tomorrow there would be more hands to lift, more rooms to enter, more stories to rewrite. And he was just getting started. He walked with purpose now. Not fast, not slow, balanced, measured. He knew every step counted. Every person he passed carried a hidden chapter. He nodded to the man sweeping the corner store lot, to the woman locking her food cart under a streetlight, to the teenage boy skateboarding past a no-skate sign. These were his people, not followers, not fans, equals. He turned onto a quiet street. Lights were low, houses tight together. Children's bikes leaned against fences. A dog barked 2 houses down. He reached a small, aging building, brick worn with time, paint peeling from the trim. A plaque by the door read, Brooks Center for Second Chances. He entered. Warm light spilled over wooden floors. The scent of paper, coffee, and cleaning spray. Inside, a group sat in a circle. 8 men. 4 women. 1 teenager. All silent when he entered, until one stood. Mr. Brooks. Elijah raised a hand. No mister in here. Just Elijah. A woman in her 50s smiled. You promised you would come. I do not make promises I forget. He walked to the circle, pulled up a chair, sat between a man with prison tattoos and a woman with trembling fingers. You all know why I am here. They nodded. Elijah continued. This is not about me. It is about us. I built a company. Yes, but I also built a bridge. A bridge from what the world throws away to what it needs most. Your stories, your pain, your insight. You are not broken. You are built. The teen spoke, barely above a whisper. But what if I already messed everything up? Elijah looked at him. You are 15. I was broke, scared, and almost arrested at 15. Now I run an empire. The teen blinked. The silence in the room shifted. From fear, to attention, to hope. Elijah leaned forward. There is no such thing as too late. Only too quiet. So speak loud. Take up space. You belong in every room you thought was locked. 1 man clapped. Then 2. Then the room buzzed with quiet applause. He stayed after the meeting, listened, took notes, laughed with them, cried once, signed papers to fund 3 new counselors, took a call from a senator and told him to wait. When he left, the sky was deep navy, stars blinking between tall buildings. His driver stood by the car. You okay, sir? Elijah nodded. Better than okay. He got in. They pulled off. The city lights flickered in the rearview mirror. Home? The driver asked. Elijah thought for a second. Not yet. 1 more stop. They drove toward the waterfront. A narrow road curved past abandoned factories, rusted signs, cracked pavement. At the very end, a small, square building. Lights on inside. He stepped out. The breeze from the water was sharp, salt and steel in the air. He entered the building. Inside, a studio. Concrete floors. Painted canvases stacked along the wall. A woman stood at the far end, painting, brush moving in steady arcs, her hair in a knot, paint on her sleeves. She turned, smiled. You actually came. You actually invited me. She laughed, walked over, held his face in her hands. You are tired. He nodded. I am full. She gestured to a canvas near the back. Want to see it? He followed. The painting was large, moody, powerful. A boy in a brown uniform, carrying a paper bag, head down, rain pouring. But behind him, a reflection, a man in a suit, head high, same scar, same eyes, different world. Elijah stared at it. Is that me? She smiled. It was... He touched the edge of the canvas. Do you think I've changed? No, she said. You just came into focus. He turned to her, held her hand. I want this in every youth center. Then it will be. They stood together in the quiet. Nothing rushed, nothing loud, just breath, just presence. He leaned against the wall, closed his eyes for a moment. He saw every hallway, every floor he mopped, every door slammed in his face. And then he saw the doors he had opened, the ones he would open tomorrow. He opened his eyes, looked at her. Come with me? She tilted her head. To where? Everywhere. She smiled, picked up her bag. I already packed. They left the studio together, walked along the water, side by side. Their shadows stretched long behind them. Ahead, the lights of a city. Awake, watching, waiting. He had arrived once. Now he was returning. Not alone, not empty, but carrying a movement, a mission. And the people who had once been unseen were walking right behind him. They walked in silence, not because there was nothing to say, but because nothing needed to be said yet. The night air wrapped around them like a story still unfolding. Behind them, the city whispered. Ahead, it pulsed, alive, uncertain, full of promise. They reached the car. The driver opened the door. Elijah paused, looked at her. You sure? She nodded, eyes steady. Wherever you go, I want to see it. He smiled. They slid into the back seat together. He gave the driver an address. Not home, not work, a school, a small one, south end of the city, tucked between an auto shop and a laundromat. It used to be a warehouse. Now it held futures. They pulled up beside the chain-link fence. Security lights hummed overhead. Inside, motion sensors blinked red and green. He stepped out, unlocked the gate with a code. She followed. The door creaked open. He flicked on the lights. The hallway smelled like new paint and old hope. Murals lined the walls, painted by students. One read, "We are not mistakes. We are makers." Another started from silence. "Now we speak." They entered the main room, desks pushed into clusters, laptops shut for the night, posters of black scientists, Latina engineers, indigenous poets. He walked to the front of the room, touched the corner of the whiteboard. "I used to sit here after hours," he said, "planning, writing, worrying." She stepped beside him. "You built this with your own hands?" "And with the hands of everyone who ever told me no." They sat on the edge of a desk, feet swinging gently. "Tomorrow," he said, "a new class starts. Teen parents, former dropouts, kids kicked out for speaking truth." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "And they will see your face and believe it's possible." He looked at her. "No, they will see their own." The clock ticked above them. Midnight. A new day. Another chance. He stood, turned off the lights, locked the door behind them. They walked back to the car, this time slower. The driver nodded, pulled away from the curb. Elijah's phone buzzed. A text from his board. "Tomorrow's agenda, national expansion proposal." He typed back, "Approved, but only if we build the same kind of schools in every city we enter." He hit send, closed the phone. His companion watched him. "You are not tired?" "I am," he said, "but not tired enough to stop." They passed a bus stop. A boy waited alone, hood pulled low, phone in hand. Elijah watched him fade behind them. He had been that boy once, wishing, waiting, fighting invisible wars. Now he wanted every child like that to have a place to land. They reached his apartment. Nothing extravagant, just high enough to see the skyline, just quiet enough to think. Inside, the walls held more books than paintings. The kitchen smelled faintly of cinnamon. He brewed tea. She sat at the window, watching the city shift. "Do you ever think," she asked, "that this is all a dream?" He placed her cup down. "I used to. Now I think the dream was believing I did not deserve it." They sipped in silence. The city moved outside like a sleeping giant. He picked up a photo from the shelf. His mother, laughing, head thrown back, missing 2 front teeth. She died before any of this happened. But every decision still passed through her voice. She used to say, "Respect those who have less. They might one day carry more." She was right. He placed the photo down, picked up a leather-bound journal, opened to a blank page, dated it, wrote, "Day 1, again, I will not be the last. I will not be the exception. I will build a door for every wall they gave me. And if that is all I do, it will be enough." He closed the journal, looked at her. "You ready for this life?" She smiled, born ready. They watched the first light rise. It touched the tops of buildings, turned glass to gold, turned concrete to possibility. He opened the window. The breeze rushed in. It smelled like new chances, fresh starts, unwritten lines. And somewhere across the city, a young girl stepped into her first interview, resume trembling in her hand. A boy entered a library he used to walk past with his head down. A father apologized to his daughter and picked up a second job to fund her dream. And all of it, somehow, had begun with a boy holding a bag, told to wait outside. But now, no one waited outside anymore. They walked in. They took their seat. They raised their hands. They stayed. And the world finally listened. The morning settled over the city like a quiet promise. The gold from the skyline began to stretch into the streets, creeping across rooftops, pouring down walls, touching even the corners people forgot. Elijah watched it unfold, not with awe, but with recognition. He had lived through too many dark mornings to take a bright one for granted. She stood behind him, wrapped her arms around his waist, said nothing. He leaned back into her. This was peace, not absence of struggle, but presence of purpose. They got ready in silence, not awkward, intentional, the way people move when they know the day ahead will demand everything. He wore no tie, never liked them. He wore his scar without apology. His history, too. The driver was already downstairs. He waited, cap tucked under one arm, opened the door as they approached. Schedule's full today, sir. Elijah nodded. I would be disappointed if it wasn't. They climbed in. The car pulled off. Their first stop, a city hall round table. Elijah would speak alongside council members, mayors, lawyers. He was not nervous. He had already stood in rooms colder than that, rooms full of men who whispered when he entered, rooms where his presence once cracked the floor. Now it changed the air. The car wove through morning traffic. Headlines flashed on a digital billboard. From delivery boy to visionary, Brooks reshapes America's boardrooms. He barely glanced at it. He did not need reminders. He was a reminder. They arrived. The plaza outside City Hall buzzed. Protesters, reporters, students, people with signs, some for him, some questioning him. He respected both. Truth worked better under pressure. He stepped out of the car. Flashes sparked. A wall of questions rose immediately. How will you handle corporate resistance to reform? Are you really donating 40% of your salary? Is it true you're launching a free school network? He raised a hand. Calm, firm. I will answer all of that inside. Respectfully. The doors opened. He walked through them. The air was cooler, sterile, but not unwelcoming. People watched him like he was part prophecy, part disruption. He sat at the table, beside city power, but no longer beneath it. The moderator tapped her mic. Let's begin. Mr. Brooks, would you like to open? He stood. No notes, no slides, just voice. Good morning. A quiet ripple answered. My name is Elijah Brooks. You know my story by now. What matters is why I'm here. He paused. Let his presence fill the room. I am not here to make a scene. I am here to make a system. I am not here to celebrate my survival. I am here to redesign the conditions that made survival necessary. Silence. Eyes wide. Ears open. He continued. For too long, we have measured value by titles, not by truth. We have rewarded comfort and penalized struggle. That ends here. I am funding programs. Yes. I am restructuring boards. Yes. But more importantly, I am redistributing belief. Because no child should feel like their birth zip code is a cage. Applause started slow, then built, then stood. He sat, unshaken. Later, in the hall, a young intern approached, clipboard in hand, trembling. Sir, I want to be you. Elijah looked at him. No, be better. Start where I ended. Go further. He handed the intern his card. The revolution is only hard if you fight alone. From City Hall, he went straight to a construction site. Dust in the air. Cement trucks grumbling. This was the first of 5 innovation schools his team was building. The superintendent met him in a hard hat, grinning. "You're just in time. They're laying the first beam." Elijah walked to the center. Concrete all around, rebar like ribs. In the center, a beam waited with a space carved for a name, a student name, chosen from the local shelter. An 11-year-old girl named Zoe. He had met her once. She asked if buildings could hold dreams. He had said yes. Now her name would be in the steel. Permanent, protected. A small girl approached the beam. Helmet too big, gloves loose on her hands. She held a marker with both fists, wrote slowly, carefully, "Zoe J., I believe in tomorrow." The workers clapped. Elijah clapped too, then turned to his architect. "Put that quote on every entry wall." The architect nodded. "Absolutely." By late afternoon, he was back in the car. Another text buzzed through from his CFO. Revenue exceeded projections. Social programs are sustainable. Want to celebrate? Asterisk, asterisk. He smiled. Type back. Celebrate by expanding again. Find the next city. Asterisk, asterisk. She looked at him from across the seat. "You ever stop? When there's nothing left to fix." She touched his hand. "You'll be at it forever." "I know," he said. "That's the point." They reached their next stop, a podcast recording. He had agreed to 1 interview a week, but only with people telling stories that mattered. The host, a woman who once slept in her car, now ran a top social justice media brand. The room was warm. Headphones, mics, a neon sign above the wall, truth over volume. She welcomed him. They sat across from each other. The producer gave the signal. Rolling. The host leaned in. "Tell me, Elijah, what's the real legacy you want to leave?" He looked into the mic, into the room, into the future. "I want the word impossible to feel outdated. I want people to walk through the world knowing they're allowed to take up space. I want to make sure the last person in line becomes the first voice we hear." The host nodded, eyes full, voice cracking. "Thank you for doing more than surviving." He smiled. "Thank you for reminding me why I never stopped." As the recording ended, he stood. Another handshake, another moment, but this one stuck. A child in the waiting room waved. She had been listening through the glass. Elijah bent down. "Hey there." She whispered, "You sound like someone who makes people brave." He looked at her. "No, sweetheart. I sound like someone who remembers." He walked out into the fading light, back into the city that once swallowed him. Now it opened, because he had made a path, because he never walked it alone, and because even the forgotten, when given voice, can build futures louder than steel. The sun dipped low, and Elijah Brooks kept walking. Ahead of him, more lives to touch, more tables to build, more rooms to unlock, and behind him, the sound of footsteps growing, more and more each day, from every block, from every corner, following the echo of a truth he had lived. They called security on the delivery boy. Now the whole city walks through the doors he built. The moon was high when Elijah finally returned home. The city lights blinked below, like distant fireflies. He stood by the window, tea in hand, the steam curling into the night air. Behind him, the softhm of jazz played low, his mother's favorite. He closed his eyes, listening, letting it carry him back, to cracked sidewalks, to heavy bags, to rooms he was never meant to enter, to voices that doubted, dismissed, and then to the ones who believed, who reached back, who lifted with him. He opened his eyes again. The skyline shimmered. Somewhere out there, another young man walked into a lobby, head high. Security watched, but did not move. That was enough. Change was never loud at first. It began with posture, with confidence, with the knowing that you belong. Elijah set down his cup, sat at his desk, pulled out the same leather-bound journal. The last page was blank. He wrote slowly, Let this be the start, not the story. Let the ones who follow walk further than I ever did. And when they do, let them find open doors, not guards. He signed his name, closed the book, breathed in deep. Outside, the wind shifted. It no longer carried fear. It carried legacy. And Elijah Brooks, once the boy with a paper bag, now a builder of futures, turned off the light and let the world keep turning. It was in good hands now,